on the closeness of the race and the fact that this race has been so close for so long. But nerves are beginning to fray over this race on both sides.
Well, if the insiders are talking to you, we're glad you're talking to us, Steve. That's for sure. Steve Brown in Chicago today. Thanks, Steve.
Lots of questions are pouring into the newsroom from our viewers. Let's bring in our town hall panel now. Karen Hanreddy is a former communications director for the National Republican Congressional Committee. Simon Rosenberg is the president of NDN, a left-leaning think tank. He was an advisor to Bill Clinton's presidential campaign. And Stephen Moore is senior economic writer for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for joining us today for this panel. Stephen, let's start with you. Patty Weicker at Orange County, California wants to know about early voting. When you say which party is ahead, how do they know? If the voting ballots are not opened early, is there a code on the envelope that tells them the party?
You know, I'll never forget this. Back before the 2008 election, on the Saturday before, I was in North Carolina at a mall in Raleigh, North Carolina. I remember driving up, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people in line. And I asked my driver, who are all those people? What are they doing there? And when I got to the front of the store that I was going into, it was almost all African Americans. And I asked these folks, what are you doing standing in line? And they said, we're all here for early voting. And these were hundreds and hundreds of people. I immediately got on the phone with my boss, and I said, this election is over. If people are willing to, stand in line for 2 hours to vote on the Saturday before the election. So we can tell a lot about who is going to vote by looking at, the districts and the areas that these early voting ballots come in on. And don't forget, by the way, that a lot of states, several states have mail voting as well, which means that a lot of people have already voted. They're not going to vote tomorrow. They voted in the last week.
So it's voting patterns from the districts that those early ballots were mailed from. Is that basically exactly how it works? All right. Thanks.
Well, and John, can I just jump in?
Yes,
some of them also, there's in the states where there's party registration, what they're looking at is they can tell whether you're a Democrat or Republican, right? So they know, and it's not a perfect measure because some Democrats can vote for Republicans and Republicans can vote for Democrats. But I think the surprising news in the early vote is the Democrats have held their own. I mean, everybody has said this is going to be a wave election. The Republicans were going to blow it out. But in terms of the people who've actually voted across the country, things are pretty even. We'll see where they are on Tuesday. But so far, I think the Democrats are happy with the way things have gone.
Karen, here's a question from somebody named Grizz. Love the names. With the expected pickup of up to 8 GOP governors, one has to wonder, will other states join the lawsuit against President Obama's health care initiative?
Ooh, that is a great question. We're going to see Republican pickups in state like New Mexico, which, by the way, is not getting a lot of attention. The first Latina is about to be elected governor of New Mexico. She's a Republican, pretty historic. It's a really good question. For instance, I tend to think in Illinois, there's a Republican who's going to win that governor's race. I tend to think that they may not. A lot of it will have to do with the attorney general in those states as well. It's the attorney general who actually is filing the lawsuits, not the governors. But that's a really interesting dynamic that we'll have to watch to see how that plays, and also just what that dynamic is in this new Congress, and how much movement there is to reform some of the worst parts of this bill, which really do offend a lot of voters out there.
All right, here's a question for all of you to ponder during the break. Viewer Tom Pearson in Virginia Beach watched Larry Sabato and his interview that Jenna conducted earlier in the hour. Tom Pearson wants to know if Larry Sabato's red sweater and red tie is his way of telling us it's going to be a Republican blowout. Ponder that one during the break.
The good old wardrobe indicator. Is that what we're saying, John?
I guess.
We'll see if fashion comes into play. We also have a lot more questions, including this one from Pamela. What is the first step towards shrinking the government? That's a great question. We'll get that one answered along with the wardrobe indicator up next here on our America's Asking Town Hall. We'll be right back.
If you buy the renegade idea that investing should be discussed face-to-face, not just inbox to inbox.
If you believe that your relationship with your investments shouldn't be long distance.
If you hold the wild-eyed theory that nest eggs, like children, should never be left with strangers.
Join the nearly 7 million investors who think like you do. FaceTime and ThinkTime make a difference.